Welcome to Monday through Friday Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega. This is episode number 32. I'm recording it on Wednesday, August 19th at 4:51 p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to follow up on this topic of morality as it relates to this pandemic and as it relates to the solution, creating a pandemic-free world, because we are attempting, and like, just let me just backtrack. And so the idea is that, this pandemic is caused by farming animals, and the way to end future pandemics is to transition from that really cruel, immoral system that's so harmful to us in many ways. It causes so much human diseases aside from this pandemic, to this new industry, this new technology called cellular agriculture, where we can grow our meat and fish and dairy in labs in a way that's completely, as much as we can be, I think, safe from pandemics. I just heard somebody talk earlier today about that, to eliminate farming would be 95% of the problem. I think that, it probably is between 95% and 100%. So from that perspective, and the other part of that is we need to, there's $1.5 billion invested in this industry. We're going to be in this pandemic in another year or so, it seems like. I just read that we're going to be wearing masks for another year. As we come out of this, in order to emerge into a pandemic-free future rather than having to dread or experience the next pandemic, it's imperative that we spend at least $50 billion, on fast-tracking this industry. So instead of in 10, 15 years to have these new pandemic-free clean meat, cellular agriculture products in supermarkets, we can have these products available in 2-3 years. So as we're emerging from this current crisis, we can get into a much better world. So, all right, so that's the basic, framework of this. So I think we need to talk about the morality. We don't talk about morality. Let's move away completely from this scientific understanding, this practical understanding that yes, we are, through our factory farming, especially, and through the farming of animals, we create these pandemics, and we in the United States, fine, we didn't have the wet market in Wuhan, but 50, 100 years ago, the Chinese people weren't eating those animals. They were very, very poor. That's a product of of many of them just rising up from poverty, and basically adopting our Western model to do that. So we need to address the morality of this. If we don't address the morality, then we cannot, address the technology. Look at what's happening with the wearing of masks. People believe that their right to not wear a mask outweighs the rights of other people to be safe from this pandemic. Okay, that's people believe that it's their right to eat meat and fish and dairy regardless of the consequences. So morality is very important, and see, nobody's addressing this. You go to your ordinary synagogue or church or mosque, the clerics are not talking about this, and that's immoral. And it may be understandable. It may be understandable because they're within the constraints of their congregations, and they're hired to basically, keep their congregations happy in a sense, and their congregations don't want to be challenged with these kinds of ideas, these kinds of challenges to their morality. But if the clerics don't do it, and our politicians aren't doing it, because they're basically constrained by the constituents. They want to get reelected. I mean, our political system is just like, fraught with so many problems, including, of course, that they have to cater to the corporations and the rich who are financing their campaigns. So, the morality aspect of this could not be denied, cannot be ignored. Because if we from two perspectives, if we don't get the morality right, we're not going to wear the masks. We're not going to invest this $50 billion in this new industry. We're not going to invest as much as we should in the vaccines and developing universal vaccines. From another perspective, if we don't get the morality right, apart from all these practical considerations, God may deem us not worthy of even emerging from this pandemic. Somebody just recently said, I was watching this YouTube video, Santa Fe Institute, I don't know, there was like some kind of conference on pandemics, on preventing them. And somebody said that, and it's right, for example, HIV, it is a pandemic, but it's also endemic. In other words, some of these pandemics, some of them we can overcome pretty completely. I think I can't. There's some that we've eradicated. Polio, for example, I think. But some of them are endemic. In other words, like we never eradicate them. They just, we have treatments with HIV/AIDS. We don't have a vaccine, and people are still dying from it, and we can treat them. Fewer people are dying. But the problem with this coronavirus is that it is becoming endemic. So like, in this video that I was watching, is, the person was saying, well, this is a new normal for this year, next year, the year after, for 10 years perhaps. And I don't think that's the kind of life world we want to live in. So unless we address the morality of this entire, condition we're in, God may deem us just unworthy of the kind of world that we were living in, and was so much, better than this in so many ways. So, I mean, it starts, and again, it starts with understanding and accepting that other animals, pigs, chickens, cows, fish, are sentient beings. They feel pain. They can feel a great deal of pain. If you've owned a dog or a cat, and if you've seen that dog or cat in pain, you understand. You understand. It's not like they're incapable of feeling pain because they're not as intelligent as we are. You understand that animals feel pain. Okay, so then understanding that, why are you continuing to eat meat and fish and dairy that comes from these animals that are virtually all abused, and many of them actually tortured, so that you can pay less money to buy these products? I mean, do you see the evil in that? And all right, with this question of morality and evil, you probably say, no, I don't see that, because, well, we get a little complicated now, but I think we have to. When I say that you're being exceedingly immoral by being complicit in the buying, this factory farming system where you're paying people to abuse and torture animals, you're probably hearing, let's say you have a religious perspective. If you're a Christian, a Catholic, you're probably hearing, well, I'm really evil, and God is going to punish me. It's my, I may end up in hell eternally, whatever. Basically, you're personally attributing this to yourself. That if I'm saying you're doing something really evil, you're understanding it as, well, you are fundamentally responsible for that evil. And this goes to the question of free will. And it's going to be hard for me to integrate this concept into this series, but I think it's important because, like, to the extent that you don't understand this basic nature of human will, you're going to remain in denial about the evil you're doing. So the idea behind this is, like, if you're like most people, you do believe you have a free will. You believe that what you do and what you don't do and what everybody else doesn't do is fundamentally up to you, up to them. And so, if you do good, you feel you deserve the reward for that good. If you do evil, you feel you deserve the punishment for that evil. Okay, but that's a faulty understanding of who you are, who we all are. There's 4 top scientists who excel beyond, they're in a league of their own, really. Newton, Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and Albert Einstein. Okay, and Newton and Einstein were physicists, Darwin was a biologist, and Freud was a neuroscientist, psychologist. And from these 3 very different fields, they each had the understanding that no, we do not have a free will. We're basically conditioned by our past, we're conditioned by our genes, this nature and nurture. If it's not nature conditioning us to be how we are, to do what we do, it's nurture. It's how we're raised, how we're brought up. So this is so important that you understand this, because to the extent that you understand that this isn't your fault, that it's not your fault that you were born into America in this time where everybody's eating animals, nobody's questioning it, and you're raised like this from a very early age. So it's understandable that you might think, well, I guess it can't be evil because that would mean that everybody around me was evil. And so, but the idea is if you believe that you have a free will, when I'm telling you you're doing something really evil, you're taking it personally. You're taking it personally. You're saying to yourself, oh, well, he's saying that I'm just fundamentally, that it's my fault that I'm being so evil. And no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's not your fault that you were raised in this culture, you were raised in this world that conditioned you to do something that's so evil. And it's important for you to understand that, because maybe once you begin to understand that, you can face the evil you're doing. You can face it from the perspective is fine. I am being compelled by nature, God, however you want to describe it, to do this evil. That has problems of its own, of course, because we tend to want to believe that God is all good and God wouldn't compel us to do anything evil. In the Bible, at least, in Isaiah, God himself says, I create good, I create evil. So I think we need to have a perhaps more accurate understanding of God to just complete this understanding of who we are. We're basically manifesting God's will. All right, so that might help you. That might help you to face the evil you're doing, not by your choosing, not by your free will, but you're still doing it. And here's the key to this. So in our world, it doesn't seem fair to me, but the way the world works seems to be that, notwithstanding our lack of free will, we are nevertheless rewarded when we do good and punished when we don't. We see this play out in our personal lives. We see this play out collectively, the many wars that have been fought, the strife, the crime, the illnesses. Perfect example of this. I mean, for example, the number 1 cause of death in the United States is heart disease, okay? The number 2 is cancer. The number 1 cause of heart disease is the eating of meat, the eating of animal products, the cholesterol, the saturated fats, the harmful ingredients. So this is punishment. People have, they just think, oh, I've been eating meat all my life and I get heart disease. And it's just a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. It's punishment from God for your having abused those animals, regardless of whether you have free will or not, considering you don't have free will. Same with cancer. There's a lot of these processed meats, with nitrates, I believe, they cause cancer, I imagine a lot of our cancers, the primary cause is the consumption of animal products. So we are getting punished in a lot of ways. Okay, so again, we're in this coronavirus era now. Again, if the experts are right, we're going to be in this year and next year and the next, and there's not going to be a new normal. It's going to be adapting to this endemic crisis. The best case scenarios show us opening and closing and opening and closing, for years, and this is, so what do we do? All right, well, we're throwing, I was going to say we're throwing all the technology we can at it, but we're not. In other words, like, and this is a moral issue, you know, why aren't our politicians talking about this new industry that can save us from future pandemics? Why aren't our politicians talking about vastly, you know, the US government just gave a couple of $1 billion to one pharmaceutical company and $1.5 billion to another to develop these vaccines. I mean, is that all that they think is necessary? And we're slated to lose $8 trillion, you know, as a result of this pandemic. So like $2 billion, you know, as a percentage of that is like what, 1/20th of 1%. You know, I'm just guessing, but it's like, it's not even 1%. It's not close to 1/2 of 1%. So in terms of morality, yes, we created this with our immoral treatment of these animals. And we're being punished, if you want to see this theologically, from God because of this. But that's only half of this. You know, we're going to continue to be punished, perhaps, likely, it seems. It seems like our luck is running out. Look at who we have as president. So it seems that if we continue our immorality, we're not going to be allowed to live the kinds of lives we lived before this. So what do we have to do to redeem ourselves? Push for this $50 billion, it should probably be $300 billion investment in this clean meat industry, the cellular agriculture, so that we don't have to wait 15, 20 years to have these products, these pandemic-free clean meat products in our supermarkets. And so we don't have to like spend another 10, 15 years abusing and torturing animals, adding to the evil we're doing and inviting greater punishment. So that's the first thing. We need to fast track this industry the same way we're fast tracking the development of vaccines. Again, the vaccine they're working on, probably within a year we'll have it. And that's, you know, the closest, the fastest a vaccine had been created before that was in 1957. There was a pandemic then, and they created a vaccine in 4 years. Ordinarily, it takes 10, 15 years. You know, AIDS has been around since the 80s. We still don't have a vaccine. So it's great that we're investing in the vaccines. We should probably be investing a lot more. You know, fine, $1 billion or $2 billion is fine. We should probably be investing $100 billion. You know, at least, again, take it as a, you know, it's $50 billion is 1/2 of 1% of what we're losing, what are just not our world, this country has lost because of this pandemic. You know, so how are our politicians, our economists, how do they not get this? You know, and I think they're just not very courageous, morally courageous. You know, those of them who understand, and there may be few, because you know, they may not be all that vested in understanding. They may be more vested in you know, getting reelected and just like working on these much smaller problems that are easier. But those people who understand that it's our factory farming system, our farming of animals that created this pandemic, they don't want to confront their constituents with this. You know, they're afraid. That's a problem. You know, that's immoral. That's immoral. Yes, it's self-serving. They get reelected, but what good do they do? You know, they're not leaders. They're following what their constituents who are ignorant of all this are demanding. So yeah, the faster, and now of course, you know, if we wanted to really be, you know, much more moral, we would just all go vegan. Would say enough of eating meat, enough of the cruelty, of the abuse and torture of these animals, enough of the consequences of this cruelty from God or from science, however you want to, you know, understand it. You know, ideally, the most powerful moral response is to go vegan. But you know, you have to understand, you know, this is a perfect example that we're not living in a very moral world. I mean, we came from a world, and you know, until 1865, we had slavery in the United States. You know, we're aborting 50 million lives every year, and that's as many as die of every other cause of death combined. Now I know, I tend to be a liberal, but I'm not sure these labels are working anymore, because, like, abortions, I think, are really wrong. And they're like, what, a woman has a right to her body? No, she doesn't have a right to her child's body. I mean, like, because with that argument, a woman would have a right to her child's body 6 months before the child is born, and then 6 months after the child is born. And of course, we can see that would be just completely wrong. People understand that. So again, we're living and in the way we treat, there's still about 1 billion poor people, on this planet. They don't have safe drinking water. They don't have enough nutrition, enough medicines. So our evil extends far beyond this farming of animals. So yes, we live in a world where we're all pretending to be good. We're pretending to be virtuous. We've got that really nailed. I mean, like, living in Westchester my entire life, I see that. It's appearances that matter. It's not, whether you're good or bad, really, that's the determiner of your success in life. By appearances, actually, because I don't think it's really a success. I think you get punished. But in this county and throughout the world, it's much more important that people appear to be virtuous to other people, to themselves, than they actually are virtuous. We need to address that, and so, like, this is the 32nd episode. And when I first started this, I wasn't focused on the morality all that much. I was focused on the practical aspects, just that, people say, well, this is a 1 in 100 year pandemic where they're basing that on the 1918 Spanish flu that killed between 50 and 100 million people. But, I've gone through this. I've gone through the different decades where, there have been many pandemics. The AIDS pandemic has killed 20, 30 million people in the 80s. We've been lucky until now, in the 2000s, because there's a much greater population, because there's so much more air travel and various other reasons, the risk of pandemics is growing very fast. And we're playing Russian roulette. We've gotten to the point where this isn't like it was in the 40s or 50s, where there wasn't that much factory farming and there wasn't that much air travel. We're living in a world where there is no other moral, practical alternative to this than ending the farming of animals, factory farming, family farming, ending all, transitioning. There's no reasonable, alternative to this. If we do this, we will be 95 at least % safe from pandemics. If we don't, we lose that 95% and we're at risk of the next one. Something that, so basically, yeah, I started out the series, working on the practicalities, but now I'm realizing, I could talk about the practicalities for 10 years, but unless I talk about the morality behind it, then you're not going to get it. You're not going to get that behind yes, factory farming is causing this, but it's you're eating these animals, regardless of how badly they're treated, how much they're abused and tortured. That is setting all this in motion. If you stopped eating animals, the manufacturers would have to stop farming the animals. And again, if you want to eat this clean meat, this cultured meat that's pandemic free, free of it's healthier in so many ways. Yes, we can begin to do that, but we need to first fast track the research. We need to finance it so we get these products available. So. Again, it's a moral issue, and I'm prepared to continue with the moral perspective because, I realize you don't want to hear it, but, you go to a doctor or a dentist, they'll tell you, well, you got to, if you want to live, you're going to have to lose an arm or a leg, or, you're going to have to be cut open or something. And generally, we accept the pain, we accept the suffering. So I hope you'll be wise enough to accept this suffering, to listen, to not take it personally, not buy into this free will belief, not blame yourself for this evil you're doing, but to hear what I'm saying, to hear, to trust me when I'm telling you that we may not emerge from this pandemic, and we may have many other future pandemics, some many times worse, until we end the farming of animals. That's the message, and it's a moral message. So basically, we may not enjoy what so many people in generations before us worked hard for and died to give us. You know, we've been bestowed this world that's so amazing in so many ways. Just look at this internet. You know, if we want to continue enjoying this world, we need to think not just of ourselves, but think of the future generations. Because like this pandemic, yes, it could be punishment for the way we treat animals, but it could also be punishment for our ignoring our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Because if anybody knows anything about climate change, they will know that by 2050, things are going to be horrible on this planet. And by 2100, they'll be beyond horrible. You know, there'll be, you know, the temperate regions like New York State will be as hot as it is in the equator. And much of the land throughout the world will not be inhabitable. It'll be so, the planet will be so hot that the hottest day on record, you know, so far will be the norm for winter in many parts of the world. So, so yeah, we need to understand, we need to face our evil in ignoring, you know, not just the rights and welfare of these animals, but the rights and welfare of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, future generations. All right. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm continually doing research, and it's unfortunate there's not much that's being presented on the media on this, on how to, you know, the vaccines on this. There's nothing on the cellular agriculture, you know, and our reporters aren't really being all that honest with us. Some are, but very few, on what we can expect. You know, this is going to be a year, 2, 3 years, you know, where we're distant and all. We need to face these things to understand, you know, the morality behind it and to change our ways. And if we change our ways, if we don't change our ways, you know, I mean, we'll pay the consequences. If we change our ways, we'll create a much, much better world for everyone, including, you know, animals. All right, so watch this every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 you get Verizon. As of yesterday, this the audio version of this episode is also on Spotify, and it's on various other podcast formats, platforms. Think about what I'm saying. You know, yes, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're doing so much evil, but to the extent that you're buying these products and you know they're coming from factory farms because they're not labeled otherwise. You know, you're creating this. You're the problem. It's not your fault. But only once you stop being so evil will we overcome this. Okay. Thanks for watching. See you next time.